Hi, I'm Erin. I thought family meant safety, trust, home. But on my 29th birthday, my parents gave me a cake they didn't bake and a suitcase I didn't pack. No hugs, no explanation. Just, you've stayed long enough. I paid for their heating, their groceries, their medical bills. I worked overtime so they wouldn't feel the cold. And in the end, I was still just a burden. They didn't throw me out because I failed them. They threw me out because I stopped being useful. So I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and quietly froze every account in my name. They wanted to live without me. They just didn't expect the lights to go with me. I placed the cake gently on the passenger seat. It was small, white frosting, and the words "Happy Birthday" written in red letters that leaned a little to the side. The teenage girl at the bakery had been too tired to care, and I had been too tired to ask her to fix it. The evening in Spokane was cool and quiet. Dry leaves scraped along the sidewalk, the trees half naked now, and the air smelled like old grass and rain that had dried too fast. I drove slowly, windows half down, letting the breeze hit my face. I wasn't expecting anything special. Not candles, not hugs, not even a card. I just wanted to feel like I mattered. A little. When I parked outside the house, the porch light was off. Only a dull glow came from the living room. I took a breath, picked up the cake, and walked to the door. The silence felt heavy before I even turned the knob. Inside, the TV was on low. My dad sat in his recliner, a beer bottle on the side table. My mom was on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. Neither of them looked up when I walked in. Then I saw it. A suitcase. My suitcase. Sitting by the door, packed. My jacket draped over the handle like an afterthought. I stopped mid-step, still holding the cake. My heart didn't race. It just sank slowly like something dropped in cold water. My dad didn't even glance away from the screen. He just said, flat and tired, like he was talking about the weather, that it was time I stopped hanging around. My mom shifted slightly and fixed the corner of the blanket on her knees. That was it. No birthday wishes, no smile, no warmth, just that suitcase and silence. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask why or what changed. The answer was already clear. I had stayed too long, paid too many bills, covered for too many things they never thanked me for. I was useful until I wasn't. I walked past them, the cake still in my hands, and climbed the stairs to my room. My feet felt heavy, like the floor was trying to pull me down, tell me to stop, to say something. But what was there to say? I reached my room and closed the door behind me. Not too hard, not too soft, just enough to feel real. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my coat. The cake was on my lap, the plastic window slightly fogged from the cold. I stared at it for a while. It looked ridiculous now. A joke. A sad little thing in a sad little moment. I hadn't even bought candles. Maybe because I already knew no one would be there to light them. The quiet in the room wrapped around me like a second skin. Not comforting. Just present. I set the cake down on the nightstand and looked at the suitcase by the closet. It was already packed. They had done it for me. Like I was being sent off on a trip I never asked to take. I thought about the times I paid their electricity bill because the notice came in pink, the groceries I covered when Mom said she forgot her card, the car repairs I booked when Dad said he didn't have time. None of it had been enough. I wasn't family to them. I was help. I took off my coat and folded it neatly, placed it over the suitcase. My hands moved on their own. Calm. Careful. I didn't feel rage. Just something deeper, like the bottom had dropped out and there was no floor anymore. Just space. I picked up my phone, not to call anyone. There was no one to call. I scrolled through old messages, old photos, birthday cakes with candles, blurry smiles, my younger face lit up by hope. I didn't recognize that girl. Not really. She wanted love so badly, she mistook duty for care. Outside, the wind started to pick up. I could hear it whispering through the thin window panes, moving the dry branches like bones. This house had never been warm. I just hadn't noticed because I was always the one keeping the fire going. And now they had tossed me out like I was the broken thing. But I wasn't broken. Not anymore. I set the phone down. The wind howled a little louder now, like the world was agreeing with me. They thought this was the end of the story. But I was just getting started. Upstairs, everything looked the same. My blanket was still folded at the end of the bed. The bookshelf still held the same paperbacks I had owned since high school. My framed photo from graduation sat on the dresser, a little dusty, tilted to one side. But none of it felt like mine anymore. This room, this house, had stopped being home a long time ago. I just hadn't noticed. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. I told myself that staying helped them, that my presence mattered, that being useful meant being loved. I thought covering bills and solving problems counted for something. It didn't. I stared at the suitcase by the closet. They had packed it without asking me, like I was a guest being checked out of a room. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. Every object here had stayed still. I was the only one who had bent, stretched, and twisted myself to keep things together. But now, something had shifted. Something inside me had gone quiet, like a switch had flipped. I wasn't angry. I was done. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dim room. My fingers moved on their own. I didn't even need to think. Years of paying bills and tracking due dates had trained my hands. I logged into the pharmacy account first. The credit card listed for automatic refills was mine. I had added it last year when my mom called me from the checkout line saying her card had declined. I had fixed it that day and never took it off. I found the settings and hit freeze card. The screen blinked and the status changed. Disabled. I stared at it for a second. Nothing inside me screamed or hesitated. Next was the electricity. I had opened that account 3 years ago after the power got shut off during the winter. My dad had forgotten to pay. I had paid the deposit, set up auto pay, and never questioned it again. I opened the utility site, logged in, and removed my payment method. The warning flashed, but I confirmed it. Then I deleted the account entirely. Then the insurance. My dad's truck, my mom's car, both under my plan. I had done it to save them money. One policy, fewer fees. It had made sense back then. I opened the insurance portal, found the section for additional vehicles, and removed both cars. The confirmation email hit my inbox before I even closed the tab. One by one, I cut the ties they had never seen. Every click was quiet. Every confirmation was calm. No big speech. No message. No fight. Just actions. Just the quiet undoing of all the invisible work I had done to keep their life stable. They had expected me to carry everything, to do it without thanks, to keep going because I was their daughter. But I wasn't their daughter in the way it mattered. I was a service, a name on accounts, a background solution. I had covered for their forgetfulness, their bad planning, their debt. And every time I told myself it was love. But love doesn't feel like being invisible until something breaks. Love doesn't mean being forgotten until the bills go unpaid. I sat still for a long time. The laptop screen dimmed slightly. The room was silent, except for the hum of the ceiling fan. I looked at my reflection in the blackened screen. I didn't look different. Same eyes, same hair pulled back, same tired shoulders. But I felt different. I wasn't confused anymore. I didn't need them to explain why. I finally understood what this had been. There would be no questions from them. No wondering where I went. No real effort to fix anything. They wouldn't ask why I left, because they already believed they hadn't done anything wrong. They didn't want me gone. They just didn't want to need me anymore. But they had built their life on mine, and now I was stepping out from under it. They had no idea what the morning would bring, and I wasn't going to warn them. The next morning, I woke up early. The light coming through the blinds was soft and gray, like the sky hadn't decided yet if it wanted to rain. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, not expecting anything important. The first notification was from my mother. It was short. The power had gone out. She asked if I knew why. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting the words sit there. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. A second message came about an hour later. She asked if I had done it. She said maybe it was a mistake. She asked me to fix it. Said please. But she didn't ask where I was. She didn't ask how I was doing or if I was safe. That silence said more than the messages ever could. I had been removed from their lives like a bill they no longer wanted to pay. And now that something had gone wrong, they reached for me like a tool, not a person. I sat at Nora's small kitchen table, my fingers wrapped around a warm mug of coffee. The apartment smelled like toast and laundry detergent. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels full, not empty. Her cat was curled on the couch. A few dishes were still drying on the rack. The space was small and worn, but I felt more seen here than I ever had in my parents' house. I reread the second message again. It didn't hurt. Not in the way it once might have. It felt expected. I had been holding their world together with quiet effort for years. Now that the cracks were showing, they didn't want to know how or why. They just wanted the lights back on. I thought about the times the electricity bill was about to be overdue, and I transferred money from my savings to cover it. I thought about the night the heater failed, and I drove across town in the snow to get space heaters, while they stayed on the couch wrapped in blankets. I thought about every late fee I prevented, every notice I intercepted, every moment I stepped in so they wouldn't feel the consequences of their own choices. They never said thank you, not once. And now that the electricity had stopped working, they finally noticed me again. But not as a person, as a utility. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the warmth calm the tension in my chest. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel proud. I felt still, like a clock that had finally stopped ticking after years of running too fast. Their house would be cold by afternoon. The fridge would start to lose its chill. The TV wouldn't turn on. Maybe they'd have to sit with each other in the quiet. Maybe they'd finally talk about things that weren't working. But I doubted it. More likely, they'd just get angry. Blame the system. Blame each other. Or maybe, like always, blame me. But blaming me wouldn't change the fact that I wasn't going to fix it. Not this time. The account was closed. My name was gone. There was nothing left to reach for. They would have to live in the dark they created. And I was just beginning to see the light. It was the day after the power went out when I got the screenshot. My phone buzzed while I was folding laundry in Nora's apartment. A friend had forwarded it to me from the neighborhood group chat. My dad had posted a long message. He said I had cut them off and left them in the dark. He said I was ungrateful, that after everything they had done for me, I had turned my back on them. His words were heavy and full of pity, but not the kind of pity that comes from pain. It was the kind that's meant to hurt someone else, the kind meant to make people feel sorry for him. I sat down at the table and read the message again. His words made it sound like I had abandoned two helpless parents in the middle of a crisis. There was no mention of the bills I had paid, the groceries I had bought, or the years I had put their needs ahead of my own. There was no mention of birthdays missed or savings drained. It was all about them. It always had been. The comments under his post started pouring in. People said they were praying for him. Some called me selfish. One person even said I must have been raised without values. They believed him. Or maybe they just wanted something to talk about. I stared at the screen and felt my chest tighten. Not with guilt this time. With something closer to disbelief. My hands closed tighter around the mug in front of me. The ceramic felt too hot. I placed it down gently, afraid I might drop it. It was strange. I thought I had prepared myself for this, for them to twist the story, for people to hear only their side. But seeing it out in the open, seeing strangers comment on a version of me that wasn't real, it hit differently. I felt like I was watching a movie where the main character was wearing my face, but none of the facts were right. It was a story built to make me disappear, and for a second, it almost worked. Then another message popped up in the chat. It was short. Someone had asked, "Didn't she pay for their house?" A few minutes later, another message followed. I saw her shoveling their driveway alone last winter. And then, wasn't it her name on the electric bill? The tone started to change. It was small at first, just a few questions, but they were enough. Enough to crack the surface of the version he had posted. Enough to make people pause. The silence after those messages felt different. He didn't reply. The comments slowed. The thread faded down the list as newer posts replaced it. I sat still, staring at the screen. I hadn't written anything. I hadn't defended myself. But something had shifted. Someone remembered the truth. Someone saw what I had done, even if they never said anything before. Maybe they didn't know the full story. Maybe they just knew enough to wonder. And maybe that was all I needed. It didn't undo the damage. It didn't erase the lies. But it proved something to me. That I hadn't been invisible. That all the mornings I scraped ice from their windshield, all the nights I worked late to cover a bill, someone saw. Maybe not my parents, but someone. And once people start asking the right questions, the lies don't stand so strong anymore. I closed my phone and sat back in my chair. The air felt a little easier to breathe. I wasn't cleared. I wasn't defended. But I wasn't alone in the shadows anymore, and I knew the silence that was coming next, from him, from her, from the neighbors, was not because they had nothing to say. It was because they had started to realize the truth was louder than they expected. I sat on the edge of the bed in Nora's apartment with the old folder in my lap. It was one of those cheap plastic ones from a dollar store, bent at the corners and overstuffed with paper. I hadn't opened it in months, maybe even longer. It had followed me through every move, every quiet shift in my life, always sitting in the back of a drawer or on a shelf I never touched. I used to think I kept it out of caution in case something happened and I needed proof of what I had done. But now I knew I had kept it because a small part of me still believed it might matter to someone. That if the day came when they doubted me, I could show them. That if I ever had to defend myself, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. I would just have to open this folder. The papers were all there. Electricity bills with my name at the top. Bank statements showing payments pulled from my account every month, even when I didn't have much to spare. A copy of the mortgage document I had helped renegotiate when they were months behind. My name wasn't on the deed, but my email was on every communication with the bank. There were screenshots of Venmo transfers, receipts for repairs, screenshots of messages where Mom asked if I could cover a bill just this once again and again. I had said yes every time. Each paper was its own story. Each number, each date, each highlighted line was a reminder of the invisible work I had done to keep their life from falling apart. No one had seen it at the time. No one had cared. But here it all was. Quiet, clear, and impossible to deny. I laid the documents out on the bed. I arranged them like puzzle pieces, though I already knew the full picture. It was me. I had been the one holding everything together. And I had done it because I thought that's what family meant. I thought that loyalty would one day be noticed. That maybe, after one more paid bill or one more emergency solved, they would look at me and say it. Thank you. But they never did. They never would. And now it didn't matter. What mattered was that I wasn't silent anymore. I wasn't the shadow behind their comfort. I wasn't the quiet line item on their to-do list. I was the reason things had worked as long as they had. And if I had let it go on, they never would have admitted it. Not because they didn't see it, but because admitting it would mean recognizing me as more than just a support beam they never built themselves. I opened my laptop and started scanning the documents one by one. The sound of the scanner was soft and steady, almost comforting. Each beep meant another piece of truth was being saved. I didn't rush. I didn't let my hands shake. I took my time. I labeled every file. I saved every copy twice. When I finished, I sat back and looked at the folder. It felt lighter now, even though the papers were all still inside. Lighter because I wasn't carrying the weight of silence anymore. I didn't know what I was going to do with the files yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But for the first time, I wasn't holding them as a maybe. I was holding them as a choice. And this time, I would be the one deciding how the story was told. I sat at the small table in Nora's apartment, my laptop open, the folder of documents spread out beside me. The sun outside had already started to dip, casting long shadows across the floor. The light in the room was soft, warm, and a little too quiet. I had gone over everything twice. Every screenshot was in order. Every bill had a date. Every transfer had a name, mine. The truth wasn't loud. It was simple. And I was done hiding it. I opened a blank post and started uploading. First, the electric bills. Dozens of them, month after month, all with my name, my bank account. Then the statements from the insurance company. The receipts from the roofing company I'd hired when the leak in their bedroom ceiling got worse. The invoice that showed I'd paid out of pocket because my dad didn't believe in overpriced contractors. The emails with the bank, the credit card confirmations, the pharmacy refills. All of it. I didn't add a caption with feelings. No long explanations. Just the facts, line by line, quiet, cold facts. At the very bottom, I typed one sentence, simple and clear. They asked me to leave. I did, but I took with me everything that kept their house warm. I read it once, then I clicked post. For a moment, nothing happened. The screen stayed still. The world didn't change. I thought maybe it would feel different. Maybe I'd feel lighter or heavier. But all I felt was calm, like something had clicked into place. Then the notifications started. At first, it was just a few likes. A couple of people shared it. Then came the comments. Some were from people I knew from school, some from old coworkers, some I couldn't even place. They said they remembered me staying home from trips, skipping holidays, working weekends. One person commented that they had always wondered why I never moved out. Another said they remembered seeing me in the driveway last winter, shoveling snow, while my parents sat inside drinking coffee. None of them had said anything before, but now they did. Now they weren't afraid. They didn't have to guess anymore. The truth had a shape now, and once it was real, once it was visible, it couldn't be ignored. More comments came in. Some were quiet, just a heart emoji. Some were long stories of their own, about parents who expected too much and gave too little. The kind of stories no one tells out loud unless someone else goes first. And I had gone first. My dad hadn't posted anything yet. Neither had my mom. But the silence from their side was louder now. Their words from earlier, calling me ungrateful, calling me selfish, started to sound different, smaller, like echoes bouncing off a wall that no longer held up. I refreshed the page and read the comments again, not because I needed praise, but because I had spent years wondering if anyone saw me, if anyone understood, and now I knew the answer. The people who stayed quiet before weren't blind. They were just waiting for someone to say the thing they all carried in secret. That sometimes being the good daughter means being the one who pays. That sometimes it means losing yourself to keep the lights on for everyone else. And that one day when you finally step away, people will call it betrayal, just because they don't know what survival looks like. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The sky outside had turned deep blue. The first stars had started to show. Inside, the quiet didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. The truth was out there now, and the real story was just beginning. A few days after I posted everything, I came home to Nora's apartment and saw a large envelope sticking out of the mailbox. It had my name printed neatly on the front and a return address I didn't recognize. I pulled it out, already guessing what it was before I even opened it. My hands were steady as I walked upstairs and sat down at the kitchen table. The apartment smelled like coffee and something baked earlier that morning. Sunlight came through the window, soft and golden across the floor. I peeled the envelope open and read the first page. They were trying to sue me. The words were dressed up in formal language, but I knew what they meant. My parents were accusing me of financial abandonment, of causing emotional stress, of leaving them in a position where they couldn't function. They called it betrayal, said I had a duty, that I had caused them harm. I read the whole thing slowly, page by page. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel surprised. I just sat there, letting the weight of it settle on my shoulders. After everything, after all the bills I had paid, after all the hours I worked to keep their world from falling apart, this was how they responded. Not with questions, not with apology, but with paperwork, with accusations, with more weight. I called a legal aid office that afternoon and explained what was happening. I sent them copies of everything, every receipt, every bill, every email and message. The woman on the phone was quiet for a moment after I finished. Then she told me I had nothing to worry about, that what they had filed wasn't a real case. It was a reaction, a loud one, but not one that would hold in court. She said I had the stronger ground, that if I wanted to, I could file my own claim, that what they had done to me, using my income, my credit, my name, without proper consent or fairness, could easily be considered exploitation, that I had a right to respond. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. I didn't care about winning in court. I cared about being free. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. I watched the wind move through the trees outside, shaking the last of the autumn leaves from their branches. The apartment was quiet, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the silence. I had spent so long trying to keep everything working, afraid that if I stopped, something would collapse. But now it had collapsed, and I was still here. They had wanted me gone. They had packed my suitcase, told me it was time to move on, and I had listened. I had done exactly what they asked. I walked away. But they didn't expect what would happen when I really left. They thought I would still stay close, that I would keep the bills paid from a distance, that I would remain useful even if I wasn't welcome. They were wrong. All I had done was remove myself. Quietly, clearly, without a fight. I froze the cards, I closed the accounts, I turned off the lights and walked out the door they opened for me. That wasn't betrayal. That was survival. But now they were cold. Now they were in the dark. Now the winter they had ignored was settling in around them, and for the first time they had to feel what I had shielded them from for years. I didn't respond to the notice. I let the lawyer handle it. They had turned a daughter into a service. And now that the service was gone, they were angry at the silence. But the silence was all that was left, and soon they would learn how loud it could be. The new apartment was small, but it was mine. The walls were painted a pale, calming blue. The floor creaked a little when I walked, and the windows stuck when I opened them, but I didn't mind. The air smelled like fresh paint and bread from the bakery downstairs. Everything inside was secondhand. Furniture from garage sales, dishes from thrift shops, a couch someone had left on the curb, but it all fit together in a way that felt quiet and soft. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be mine. That day, I bought myself a cake. I walked to the corner bakery and chose the one with raspberry filling, the kind I always wanted but never picked because someone else preferred chocolate or vanilla. There were no candles, no words written on top. I didn't want any. I didn't need the cake to say happy birthday or congratulations or anything else. I just wanted something sweet. For me. I brought it home and set it on the counter, then made a cup of tea and sat by the window. The city outside moved slowly. People walked their dogs. A kid on a bike passed by, yelling something I couldn't hear. The trees were bare now, their branches black against the pale sky. It was cold out there, but inside the radiator hummed soft blanket over my knees was warm. I opened my laptop. Not for work, not for bills, just because I felt like writing something. I didn't overthink it. I typed one sentence. Sometimes, the only way for your family to see you is to disappear. I stared at the words. They didn't feel angry. They didn't feel bitter. They just felt true. I had tried for so long to be seen by the people who raised me. I had helped. I had given. I had waited. But nothing changed until I walked away. Only then did they notice what they had lost. Not because they missed me, but because they missed the comfort I brought. I had stopped paying for their heat. Now I was learning how to keep myself warm. And it was quiet here. There was no yelling from the living room, no cold glances across the dinner table, no guilt waiting in the hallway, just a soft space, a warm mug, and a cake that didn't need a reason to exist. I didn't know what the future would hold. Maybe I would still feel hurt on some days. Maybe the silence would still sting sometimes, but it was a different kind of silence now. It didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. For the first time, I wasn't trying to earn love by giving more of myself away. I was simply existing. I was choosing. I was staying close to what made me feel alive. I looked at the cake again and smiled a little. I didn't need anyone else to clap or light candles or say I had done the right thing. I already knew. This warmth wasn't borrowed. It was mine.